The UFC is officially back, launching on Paramount after a 6-week break and the end of the ESPN era, and launching the Paramount deal, the main event of UFC 324, Justin Gaethje against Paddy Pimblett for the UFC interim lightweight title. We also have Sean O'Malley versus Song Yadong on the card. We have some good main card matchups and some really solid prelims as well. So we're going to be going through the entire card, starting with the early prelim opener, working our way up to the main event. And I'll be giving you my thoughts, breakdown, and prediction on each and every fight on the card. So stick around to hear my full UFC 324 breakdown and predictions. My name is Wyatt. Welcome to Fight Society. Do me a huge favor before we begin, guys. Like and subscribe down below. And if you're watching on your phone, swipe left on the comment section and hit that hype button for me as well. But without further ado, let's get into UFC 324. We finally made it, boys. We are finally back in action. The 6-week wait, the 6-week drought, it is over. I don't even know what to think, man. We're back, and I had to wait 6 weeks, and no, I'm just playing. I don't cry on camera like Perry Punch does, but we'll get to that in another video. Here we have Adam Fugitt versus Ty Miller, the prelim opener, the very first fight in the Paramount deal. Adam Fugitt, he is 10-5. His most recent fight was a loss to Islam Dulatov at UFC 318. Before that, he beat Josh Quinlan, who got cut by the UFC, but he beat him by a split decision. And before that, he got guillotined by Mike Malott. So Adam Fugitt is very much a journeyman, middle of the pack UFC fighter, not somebody that's going to become a champion. And there's a reason that they're matching up an undefeated 6-0 prospect with this guy, is because they think the prospect can win. Ty Miller came from LFA. He's coming off a Contender Series win. The Contender Series guys do tend to get a little bit of an extra push as opposed to the guys that just get signed to the UFC from the regional promotions. When you consider that Adam Fugitt has had an up and down career to this point, and Ty Miller, 25 years old, he doesn't have the experience on his side, but he has the momentum and he has the youth on his side. And I think that they make this matchup for a reason. I'm going to go with Ty Miller by decision. Adam Fugitt is just not a very dangerous fighter. He went to a split decision with Josh Quinlan. He got finished by Islam Dulatov. He got finished by Mike Malott. I could see a Ty Miller TKO, but I think what we're going to get here is a 30-27 decision for Ty Miller, moving on in the UFC welterweight division, while Adam Fugitt has to have a very hard conversation with the UFC about the end of his UFC run. I just think that's what it is. You're 10-5. You've had multiple fights in the UFC. You get matched up with some killer undefeated 25-year-old from the Dana White Contender Series. You are about to get cut. If you lose, you're going to get cut. And honestly, if you win, you might get cut because they don't want you to win this fight. So I am going with Ty Miller by unanimous decision, 30-27. We move on to the next fight on the early prelims. We have Ricky Turcios, if I'm not mistaken, former Ultimate Fighter winner, going up against Cameron Smotherman. They are both coming off of losses. They both have very similar records, 13-5 versus 12-6. However, Ricky Turcios just finds a way to lose fights. He lost to Bernardo Sapage in his last fight. He lost to Raul Rosas the fight before that. He beat Brady Highstand, not very good. Lost to Ayman Zahabi. That's a good loss. I mean, nothing's a good loss, but an acceptable loss to somebody that's on their way to a title shot with one more win, essentially. Whereas Cameron Smotherman, he's coming off of 2 losses in the UFC, but he has 2 pretty good losses, respectable losses. One against Sergey City, who is very big for that weight class, very, very good. After that, he lost to Ricky Simone. Ricky Simone is a mainstay in this division. He's not some elite guy, but he knocked out Javid Basharat. He beat Marab technically by that guillotine. Ricky Simone, Sergey City, those are both okay losses. Like early on in your career, young guy going up against those type of contenders, I'm okay with those losses. Ricky Turcios, on the other hand, I know he lost to Ayman Zahabi, but recently not very good losses, and he just is so chinny to the point to where when I look at Ricky Turcios, he looks like he's afraid to get knocked out because he's been hit so many times, whether that be in the gym or KO'd in fights. He seems timid to engage in a firefight, where Cameron Smotherman, I don't see that. Also, Cameron Smotherman's only UFC win to this point is against Jake Hadley, and I think Jake Hadley is good. I know he didn't have the most successful UFC run, but I like Jake Hadley. Good fighter, pretty well-rounded, not bad. I don't mind Jake Hadley. And so Smotherman getting a win against him and then losing to Sergey City and Ricky Simone, I have to go with the experience against better competition, somewhat level of success against better competition in Cameron Smotherman. And he's got the toughness and he's got better adaptability than Turcios. Turcios, if his game plan doesn't work, he tends to just continue down that line that leads to a loss. Smotherman has made some adjustments in fights that I like. That is why I'm going to take Cameron Smotherman by 29-28 decision. Turcios gets the first round and then loses the second and the third. Smotherman 29-28 is what I'm expecting. We move up the card to one of the more entertaining matchups from a microphone standpoint because we have Josh Hokit going up against Denzel Freeman. Josh Hokit had a big win on Contender Series and then he got his UFC debut win in November. And then Denzel Freeman just fought on the UFC Qatar card, if I'm not mistaken. I'm far more impressed with Josh Hokit. He does have power in his hands, former NFL player. He's got good athleticism for this weight class, even if he's going to be 30 pounds heavier. You look right here, 30 pounds lighter. 235 to 265. But Denzel Freeman's fight at UFC Qatar, I'm pretty sure it was Qatar. It was sloppy shit. Him and his opponent literally never got started, and I really fucking did not like that fight. It looked like two shit fat heavyweights trying to make it to the end. It was like they agreed that they were going to do a full 15-minute spar, and they really didn't do much else besides try to score points. They weren't trying to hurt each other. They were trying to score points and make it to the end, and I don't like that fight style against somebody like Hokit that's aggressive, has power in his hands, and he pressures. He's going to pressure Freeman, and Freeman's going to break. That's what I think is going to happen. We're going to get a first-round TKO by Joshua Hokit. He's going to pressure early. Freeman's going to start spazzing out and short-circuiting, panicking, either a panic shot or throwing wildly, and Hokit's going to put a right hand on his chin and drop him, follow him up with TKO ground and pound, and I think that's what happens is a ground and pound TKO after Hokit drops Denzel Freeman. So that's my pick for this fight on the prelims is Josh Hokit by round 1 TKO. We move up the card to a very interesting matchup in Michael Johnson versus Alexander Hernandez. Now, Michael Johnson's been around the block for one, and he's coming off 3 straight wins. So I got to give him some credit for that. But Alexander Hernandez is coming off of a 4-fight winning streak where he beat CDF, Carlos Diego Ferreira, on that win streak. And I think Michael Johnson actually lost to CDF before this 3-fight win streak. These guys are both vets. Of course, Johnson more than Hernandez, but these guys are both vets, and they are both going to be making a push towards the rankings. Even the Unk, Michael Johnson, is making a push towards the rankings. And I think that the winner of this fight is likely to get a Faris Siam and even the loser of Huffy versus Fiziev because they fight next weekend. I know Alexander Hernandez is younger and he's on the longer win streak, but for some reason, Michael Johnson just finds a way to make me regret picking against him every single time. They both have pretty good boxing. Alexander Hernandez, of course, has the power and athleticism, but Michael Johnson is slick, veteran, tricky boxing, knows how to game the system and survive through rounds and save energy for later in the fight. He beat Daniel Zellhuber. I mean, I'm going to go with Michael Johnson by decision in this fight. He's a crafty vet. He's a crafty vet. He's too crafty of a vet for Alexander Hernandez. And we saw the last time Alexander Hernandez fought a crafty vet, he lost to Cowboys. So that's what I think because he fought Chase Hooper, he fought CDF, and I know CDF beat Michael Johnson. But when it comes to that big moment to get a big step up, I feel like Alexander Hernandez fumbles those opportunities. That's why I'm going to go with Michael Johnson 29-28 decision, and I think it's going to be an absolute fucking war. Now, this is where you start to see how stacked this card is because we have a ranked matchup already, and it's on the early prelims. We have Alex Perez against Charles Johnson. Alex Perez popped his knee against Tatsuro Taira, lost that fight, and then he got standing guillotined by Asu Almabayev, I believe on the Qatar card. Now he's going up against Charles Energy Johnson, who is the dark horse of the flyweight division. Make no mistake about Charles Johnson. And it's crazy because he had 3 losses in a row back in 2023. And then he has bounced back. He's got a win over Joshua Van, the current champion. He just knocked out Loner Kavanaugh in China. I know he lost to that Temirov guy earlier last year, but Charles Johnson is on a tear. He finds a way to make the fight ugly when his opponent wants to make it clean. He finds a way to be crispy when his opponent wants to brawl. He finds a way to take his opponent out of whatever game plan or comfort zone they wanted. And especially in this fight where you have an Alex Perez coming off of 2 losses in a row that did not go very well. You might think that this is a better matchup for Perez because he just got submitted twice, essentially. I know one was an injury, but he got submitted twice, and now he's fighting someone with a little bit more boxing, striking style like Charles Johnson. Even with that said, that Alex Perez, mindset-wise, is going to be very timid about getting finished. He's gotten finished in back-to-back fights. Charles Johnson has wins over the champ. Charles Johnson probably has a very high level of confidence despite only being like 13 or 14 in the division. When you have the champ, the current champ, whether he won on a fluke injury or not, when you have the current champ with the belt, that's somebody you've knocked out, that is a massive, massive boost of confidence for Charles Johnson. I'm going to go with a crazy high-paced fight where Charles Johnson gets a round 3 TKO. I think that Perez starts to fade. Charles Johnson gets him up against the fence and starts landing some big boxing shots. Not a ton of kicks, but big, up against the fence. Uppercut, hook, straight, hook, cross, body shot, stuff like that. And he gets a finish up against the cage, standing TKO, or he drops and gets finished. But Charles Johnson TKO round 3 is what I'm going to go with because Perez does hang around. He finds a way to lose, but he hangs around for a little bit before he does that. So I got Charles Johnson winning this fight by TKO. We move on to Nikita Krylov versus Modestas Bukauskas, the first fight on the regular prelims. And this is a big one because Modestas Bukauskas, after blowing out his knee against Khalil Roundtree and having a pretty big climb back into serious competition for MMA, now he's fighting for a ranking. He's fighting number 13th ranked Nikita Krylov, who has not looked good. At all recently. Last 2 fights are him getting finished, knocked out by Dom Reyes, and then TKO'd by Bogdan Guskov, whereas Modestas Bukauskas is on a 4-fight win streak. He beat Marcin Prachnio, he beat Paul Craig, he beat Ion Kultilaba. Those guys are serious talents, I guess you could say, for the light heavyweight division because this is a very thin division. And Nikita Krylov getting knocked out by Dom Reyes, who's gets knocked out by everybody basically, and Bogdan Guskov, who I don't rate super highly, compared to Modestas Bukauskas' 4-fight win streak, I got to go with Modestas Bukauskas bouncing back from that knee injury and getting into the UFC light heavyweight rankings with a KO win here. I think Nikita Krylov is just far too chinny to be at light heavyweight, and there really isn't anywhere else for him to go because if he goes down to 85, he either doesn't make weight or it's too big of a weight cut. It makes him more chinny. He moves up to heavyweight and they hit way harder. He gets KO'd the same. I think Nikita Krylov is nearing the end of his career, and that's why I'm going to go with Modestas Bukauskas round 1 KO. Heavy hitting 205er, regardless of what your power is relative to that weight class, these guys do hit harder at 205, 85, and heavyweight as opposed to the lighter weight classes. And being chinny, back-to-back knockout losses like Krylov does not bode well. So I got Modi B, Modestas Bukauskas, winning by knockout in the first round. Knockout. And we move on to Ateba Gautier going up against Andrey Pulyaev. He's finally getting a similar size matchup. They are both 6'4", 185, but the reach is still on Ateba Gautier's side. I mean, let me be real. Andrey Pulyaev is getting his fucking head knocked into the bleachers. He's getting his head knocked into Joe Rogan's lap because Gautier cracks. He's got that Cameroonian Francis Ngannou power. And he's not an industry plant in the Paddy Pimblett, Jaden Cable sense, but he is the industry plant because they've decided that he's going to be a big star. And despite big knockout wins and dominant wins leading up to this fight, he's still getting a relatively easy matchup, in my opinion. I thought they should have given Ateba Gautier a fringe ranking guy like a Gregory Rodriguez or a Bruno Ferreira, somebody like that. But instead, he gets Andrey Pulyaev. And Andrey Pulyev's one step up in competition in the UFC to this point has been CLD, Christian Leroy Duncan, and he lost. So I got to go with Ateba Gautier. Pulyev's only been knocked out once in his career before, but this Ateba Gautier is just a next level of power for him to deal with, and that's why I am going to go with Ateba Gautier round 2 KO. I think it's going to be a nasty KO as well. The height is the same, but the reach and the power is vastly different when it comes to Ateba Gautier compared to Andrey Pulyaev. So I'm going with Ateba Gautier round 2 KO. And we move on to the featured prelim of the night, Umar Nurmagomedov against Deiveson Figueiredo. Umar, he lost last January to Merab, and then he came back in October on the Surreal Gone Tom Aspinall card where he beat Mario Batista. And Deiveson Figueiredo, who lost to Peter Peter Yan and then had a knee injury loss against Corey Sandhagen in Iowa of last year. Bounced back on the Rio card where Charles Oliveira beat Matus Gamrot, and he got a win over Montel Jackson. Montel Jackson really didn't show up that night, and I thought that it was a big jump up in talent for Montel Jackson to go and face Deiveson Figueiredo. Now, Deiveson Figueiredo, former flyweight champ, he's got great finishing ability, but we have seen from him that he's one of those guys that he's a little too big to continuously cut weight to 125. It very much depletes him in the course of making weight for that fight and cooks his cardio. His cardio is shit at 125, but then at 135, he's too small. And I think that's what's going to happen here against Umar. Umar's not the tallest guy in the world. They have him listed at 5'8" here. But Umar is not the tallest bantamweight in the world. However, very strong, very athletic, very muscular, great grappling, creative striking. I think that we are going to see a masterclass Umar performance, a 30-27 decision, or a dominant wrestling type of performance that ends up with Figgy getting his back taken and choked somewhere in the second or third round. But I am going to go with Umar by a 30-27 or 29-28 decision. I think it's going to be pretty one-sided. Maybe Figueiredo comes out very aggressive round one and steals that first round. But I think that Umar has shown us he is just levels above everybody in this division with the exception of Merab. Like, I think Umar probably beats O'Malley too. So, and we'll have to see what if they ever match him up with Peter Yan, what would happen there. But I think he beats most of the top guys in the division. And that's why I have Umar Nurmagomedov by dominant decision or late sub. And this right here, you know, you're going to have the argument for who fights Peter Yan next because there's the Merab trilogy. I think they owe Merab that at some point. There's O'Malley, because if he wins, he's in the co-main event of this card against Song Yadong. If O'Malley wins, I almost guarantee that Peter Yan versus O'Malley would be on the White House. But then you also have Umar right here, and if Umar dominates Figgy, then he could get the title shot too. It just depends on how long Merab wants to rest for and recover after that loss, how quickly O'Malley can turn around. If Umar wants to turn around and fight before Ramadan or right after Ramadan, maybe that gets him the title shot. In the meantime, while they do O'Malley, or while O'Malley's on the sideline and Merab's recovering, I think it's very clear that if O'Malley wins, he gets the title shot. If O'Malley loses, Merab gets a trilogy. But I think there is a world where Umar dominates so one-sidedly that people start calling for a fight with Petr Yan. I could already see them doing it as a fight, not a fight night, I'm sorry, a pay-per-view main event in the Middle East for the belt. If they're going to have Islam fight in the US because he's that big of a star, Yan versus Nurmagomedov sounds like a Dubai, Abu Dhabi, or Saudi Arabia main event to me. I think that would make a lot of sense. It would be very catering to their fan base without giving someone a totally undeserved title shot. So Umar by decision, and depending on how good of a win it is and how much he overperforms expectations, could get a title shot. But we move on to the main card. Quick break. If you're loving this video and you want more from Fight Society, click that join button down below to become a channel member today, where you'll get access to members-only live streams, behind-the-scenes vlogs, and all the unfiltered stuff that we don't post to the main channel. Back to the video. The very first main card in Paramount history being opened by Arnold Allen versus Gene Silva. Gene Silva coming off of his loss against Diego Lopez earlier this year. Arnold Allen beat Giga Chikadze at UFC 304. He's been out for over a year. And I think that ring rust, even though Gene Silva got knocked out very recently, I think it was September, it's a very quick turnaround for him. But Arnold Allen dealt with injuries, been out for a long time. I think that this plays in favor of Gene Silva, especially Arnold Allen, ring rust, really not the most active guy in the world. And I do have some doubts about Gene Silva's ability because Arnold Allen does do very well against strikers. I mean, Arnold Allen, he beat Dan Hooker. He beat Calvin Kattar, who's boxing heavy. Put on a really good fight with Max Holloway. It was very clearly a Max Holloway win, but it was a close fight, like 48-47, if I remember correctly. So part of me wants to think that Gene Silva's a little bit in over his head after getting knocked out and going up against a very good striker. Nah, I can't go with Gene Silva. I'm sitting here about to pick Gene Silva, and then when I explain it to myself, I can't pick him. I just can't pick Gene Silva in this fight. I know they want him to win. They want to push the fighting nerds. That's why Mauricio Huffy is getting a fight up in the rankings against Fiziev after losing to Benoit Saint-Denis. That's why Kyle Bohalio loses to Imavov and he's getting a co-main event slot at 326 against Reinier de Ridder. I'm not hating on it. I like the fighting nerds a lot. I actually kind of want Gene Silva to win because I think he's an entertaining guy to have at the top of this division. I think him versus Volk would be really fun. But with that said, I have to go with Arnold Allen. When you look into it, the striking, defense, and offense of Arnold Allen, I think he's going to win. And I think Gene Silva fights way too emotional. Arnold Allen is going to be a little bit down for a firefight, and Gene Silva is going to get sucked into a very, very nasty exchange that gets him dropped. I'm going with Arnold Allen round 2 KO. I was going to say Gene Silva by decision or sub, but nah, I'm going with Arnold Allen round 2 KO. I think this is going to be a crazy fight, car crash, and Arnold Allen's going to come away with a win and probably try to jump Movsar, try to jump Lerone Murphy and get a title shot because he's been kind of inactive, but he does have a very good resume. He lost to Max Holloway, and then he lost a very, very close fight with Movsar that I thought could have went Allen's way. I think he gets a KO win and calls for a title shot. Not sure if he gets it, but he's going to call for it. We move on to Natalia Silva against Rose Namajunas, moving up from the main card. This has replaced the open spot that Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes' pullout caused. And now we have the DEI higher women's fight on the main card. We lost the women's title fight. You knew they were going to put this fight on there. Rose Namajunas against Natalia Silva. Natalia Silva undefeated in the UFC. She's got wins over Alexa Grasso, wins over Jessica Andrade. Whereas Rose, even though she's taken more losses, especially more in the UFC because Silva's undefeated, she is a former champion. She's beaten Wei Li twice. It's crazy to think that that happened. She hasn't succeeded against the same high level of flyweight competition since moving up. She beat Tracy Cortez. She beat Miranda Maverick. But she lost to Erin Blanchfield. I think Erin Blanchfield probably beats Natalia Silva. I am going to go with Natalia Silva. She's a very patient striker, finds a way to outpoint her opponents. Rose tries to outpoint her opponents, but sometimes seems to never get started. And I'm not just talking about the Esparza fight. I'm talking about some of the other fights as well. She's way too complacent. I think this is going to be a super boring fight, to be honest, because she's way too complacent. Natalia Silva's way too patient. And I think it's going to lead to a very point fighty, sparring type of fight that is going to be a 29-28 decision for Natalia Silva. That's who the UFC wants Natalia Silva to win. She's younger. She's undefeated in the UFC. They've already gotten their pay-per-view sales, I guess you could say. They've already gotten their clicks out of Rose. And there's a lot of people that talk about her relationship with Pat Barry. I don't think she's somebody that they necessarily want in a big position in the UFC anymore. I think they got their squeeze out of that orange. You know, they got their orange juice out of that. And they squeezed their orange juice out of that orange is essentially what I'm saying. Whereas Natalia Silva, new face, like I've talked about, they're trying to bring in new stars and bring on a new generation in this Paramount era. That's why we got Paddy getting a title shot, Natalia Silva getting this fight, Joe Pyfer fighting Adesanya. Natalia Silva, decision, a close fight, a boring fight, and they're going to get booed. But Natalia Silva, 29-28 decision is what I think happens. So moving on from there, we have a car crash of a heavyweight fight. Waldo Cortes-Acosta getting his 5th fight in 10 months, 5th fight in 11 months, something like that. Coming off of his win over Shamil the GOAT Gaziyev at UFC Qatar. Now he's turning around for a Derrick Lewis fight. This is a big, big step up in competition, in my opinion, for Cortes-Acosta from Gaziev to Lewis. Still a big name, still a lot of punching power, but now he's starting to have to deal with the more athletic, younger guys. And so I really want to lean towards Waldo Cortes-Acosta. For some reason, when it's not against a top-level guy, when it's not against a Pavlovich, when it's not against a Ciryl Gane, when it's against these up-and-comers, Derrick Lewis wins these fights. Derrick Lewis is going to land a fucking massive overhand. No. Here's what's going to happen. Round 1, Waldo Cortes-Acosta picks him apart a little bit with the jab and maybe gets him down on a double leg. And we're like, okay, here we go. Going to be a dominant decision for Waldo Cortes-Acosta. Round 2, Derrick Lewis comes out super aggressively and Waldo folds under that pressure very, very quickly because it is the biggest knockout artist in the history of the UFC. I am going to go with Derrick Lewis round 2 KO. And there isn't a whole lot of technical breakdown. They are heavyweights. They're going to get tired fast and be swinging for the fences. And in that type of fight, I like Derrick Lewis. So I'm going to go with Derrick Lewis round 2 KO after losing round 1. And then, honestly, might be talking about Derrick Lewis in a big fight, like a Ciryl Gane, John Jones, Alex Pereira, Tom Aspinall type of fight. I know there's some things to get sorted out at heavyweight. I am going with Derrick Lewis, and he's putting himself in the title picture with a win. So we move on to the co-main event. Sean O'Malley, Sugar Show, making his return after back-to-back losses against Merab Dvalishvili. Song Yadong, we haven't seen since his win against Henry Cejudo at UFC Seattle last year. It was the whole eye poke majority technical decision. It was a really weird fight. I was at that one. The ending was really, really weird. Song Yadong is very, very aggressive, very powerful, and very durable, but he's giving up 3-4 inches in height. He's given up 5 or 6 inches in reach. He's given up 2 inches in leg reach, and he's lost to guys that do have a similar style and frame to Sean O'Malley. And by that, I mean the Corey Sandhagen fight that he lost. Now, this isn't going to be one of those O'Malley fights where he lands a big shot on somebody and puts him away early, like the Aljamain Sterling fight. He's not going to one-punch KO Song Yadong. But Sean O'Malley, as time has gone on, has become more of a sniper and less of a volume guy, because early on, he had the Raulian Paiva finish. He had other fights where he would land a big number of strikes that would lead to a late round TKO because they had been hit so many times, or it would lead to a decision where he would just school in somebody, or a volume flurry like Raulian Paiva standing TKO up against the fence, basically. He's turned into more of a one-shot power guy. I think he strikes at like a 60% clip, where he lands like 60, 70% of his significant strikes. So O'Malley, he doesn't throw a whole lot, but he does land big shots, and I think that Song Yadong is going to be trying to close the distance. I think O'Malley's going to sit on that power left hand multiple times, land big shots, and I think O'Malley's going to win on damage. I think that Song Yadong is going to land more strikes. He's going to land some leg kicks. He's going to try to shoot some double legs. O'Malley's going to land less in terms of volume, but he's going to drop Song Yadong at least once and defend the takedowns to where Song Yadong looks kind of panic-ish compared to how he's looked in other fights. And while Sean O'Malley is going to want some highlight reel KO and then call for a title shot, I think he's going to win by decision. It's going to be a fun fight. It's a big spot, co-main event on Paramount. Song Yadong, this is a huge opportunity for him to become a top 3 guy in the division and get skipped over for a title shot because they're not fucking giving him one compared to O'Malley or Umar or Jan or Merab. Any of those, he's not going to fight any of those guys. Maybe he fights Umar off of a win. But I think Sean O'Malley is going to win a 29-28 decision. I think there's going to be one round where Yadong gets off jab, calf kick, and maybe a double leg, things like that, and win a round. But I think O'Malley is going to have the championship experience. He's going to push a little bit more being in a 3-round fight instead of 5. And we're going to see a very crispy, clean, and powerful O'Malley that is going to lead to a 29-28 decision. And depending on how much of a dominant win it is, like if he drops Yadong twice, 3 times, things like that, he'll get a title shot. If it's relatively boring and Sean kind of survives through the fight, then they're going to do Sean versus somebody else, Sean versus Umar, probably on the same card as Peter Yan and Merab trilogy. O'Malley needs to put on a big, big win, a statement win to get a title shot, because I don't think they're as thirsty to give him title shots as they have been in the past. So a boring win does not mean a title shot. A win period does not mean a title shot, but a knockout or a dominant win for Sean O'Malley does mean a title shot. But you guys let me know down below. Do you think Sean O'Malley gets a title shot with any win, or it has to be a very impressive win? But I got O'Malley by decision. But we move on to the main event, the biggest fight of the night. Undeserved title fight for both guys, but a sick fight at that. Justin Gaethje versus Paddy Pimblett. Justin Gaethje, hard-hitting striker, going up against Paddy Pimblett with good jiu-jitsu. It's kind of interesting, the matchup that we have here, because we have Gaethje, a very, very strong striker, going up against Paddy with very bad striking defense. And then on the other side, we have Paddy, a very dangerous submission artist, going up against Justin, who has very suspect takedown defense and submission defense. I mean, Rafael Fiziev put him flat on his back twice. Paddy Pimblett just beat Michael Chandler, who did give Gaethje a very, very hard fight. Now, I think the first round is going to be dominantly in Justin Gaethje's favor, landing the calf kick, making Paddy look a little wobbly on that lead leg. Maybe a big right hand gets through. He tries to clinch up. Paddy wants to grapple. Justin Gaethje lands that uppercut in the clinch. Maybe even hurts Paddy badly in the first round. But then I think round 2, Paddy turns it up. He lands a big jump knee like he did, because Justin Gaethje likes to go high guard and lean his head down. I think that's where Paddy Pimblett throws that jump knee, flying knee, cracks Justin Gaethje. Gaethje backs up. A big boxing combo from Pimblett puts Justin on the back foot up against the fence, and then we either get a double leg or we get Justin Gaethje dropped and followed to the ground by Paddy Pimblett, and we get some sick jiu-jitsu out of Paddy Pimblett. That's going to look pretty similar to when Charles Oliveira submitted Justin Gaethje. where he goes back control for the choke, then he tries for the arm bar, then he goes back to the back control for a choke. And I think we're going to get a round 2 or 3 Paddy Pimblett rear naked choke, and Paddy Pimblett's going to be the interim champion. And then him versus Topuria later this year, one of the biggest fights in recent memory for the UFC. But they're so similar. They're so similar. You have a little bit of reach advantage for Paddy Pimblett, but they're about the same height. They're both relatively big lightweights. They're not undersized. They're not oversized. I mean, Paddy's kind of big for the weight class. I don't believe this 5'11" for Gaethje and 5'10" for Paddy, because I think Gaethje's shorter than Paddy, but we'll see. I think we're going to get Paddy with a win by finish. Justin Gaethje retires, and then we're going to have an all-time yap session of Ali Abdelaziz coping after the fight on Twitter or in an interview, talking about how Paddy doesn't deserve this and Islam would have crushed him, all this different bullshit from Ali Abdelaziz. And Paddy is then lined up for some massive fights, either against Ilya, where they settle undisputed versus interim, or Ilya has to vacate, doesn't return in time, and they do Paddy versus Arman, because I think that's a big fight too, considering the generational PR run that Arman Sarukian has been on. So that's what we have, guys. I have Gaethje losing to Paddy Pimblett in the main event by finish. I got O'Malley by decision, Lewis by knockout, Silva by decision, Allen by knockout, Umar by decision, Gautier by finish, Modestas Bukauskas by finish, Charles Johnson by finish, Michael Johnson by decision, Joshua Hokit by KO, Smotherman by decision, and Ty Miller probably by decision as well. So that is my full card picks for UFC 324, guys. We are back in the mix, all right? We have fights, back-to-back pay-per-views. I'm doing fight companions for both, guys. Like, subscribe, let me know your picks down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Do you want more from Fight Society? Like and subscribe below this video, and click the join button to become a channel member today to get access to behind-the-scenes vlogs and members-only live streams.